We're very happy, very excited to be here today with HIMAYAT INAYATI. Thank you for taking your time, HIMAYAT, to be here with us. And thank you for those who are here online synchronically with us, and also those who are going to see the interview after. This is a moment of opening possibilities, opening possibilities in our mind, in our hearts, in our experiences, in order to have perspectives, views, and then we are able to choose also by receiving this sensation, this information. And I have the honor to be working, studying as a disciple with HIMAYAT INAYATI since some time already, maybe a couple of years or a year and a half, something like this, in a project that he holds that it's called Universal Awakening. And this information that he shares in his workshops and through his life and experience is based on the ancient Sufism, that it also includes part of the universal Sufism from the Ruhaniyat tradition. And HIMAYAT, he received the sacred transmission from Samuel Lewis, from Mushik Samuel Lewis, and through his initiation and the training with Sheikh that is ahead of Sufi lineage, that is called Mansour Johnson, with Mansour Johnson. And in 2001, he received this initiation of being a Mushik by Pir Vilamayat. Mushik means like the head of the Sufi lineage. Then through his experience, through the time, he has been studying, researching, and bringing up all of this information for us all in the West to get included in the process of recognizing the Sufism. Then now HIMAYAT is a member of the Sufi order of the West, of this part of the world, and also the Inayati order. And then all of these names and all of these recognitions maybe could be like something that is not needed for HIMAYAT, but for sure is something that I want to recall, because one has the possibility to gain access to information through the practice, through the transmission of other teachers. And this is what HIMAYAT has been moving through in his life with his experience. And now he's open to share also all of this experience. And thank you again, HIMAYAT. And thank you all the ones that are here and adding to this session. Then because in Costa Rica, this is like kind of a new aspect, a new information. Sufism is not a big tendency here, and not even know. And then I would like to start with some basics about what is the Sufism. And of course there is this universality in the Sufism, but it also started from the ancient mysticism. Then I will ask you, HIMAYAT, if you can share with us a little bit about its origins and what is Sufism, and then we can start from that on.
Yes, and I wonder if the two people could show their faces to me. So I would show my face to them. If they would show their face to me, that would be wonderful. Thank you. Hello. How about Yam? Is it possible?
I was trying to activate my camera. I think I'm gonna have to disconnect and come back again, because for some reason I have I'm just gonna connect right away.
Okay, come back. I myself have these problems with Zoom. Well, yeah, Sufism. It started a long time ago, even before Islam. Mostly it's known as a mystical tradition of Islam, but the Sufis feel that they started with Adam that long ago. Adam was the first prophet. And they came into Islam mostly to bring the living Islam, because by the time Sufi order started to develop, it was 300 years after the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace. And people had already gotten very fundamentalistic. The theologians, the imams, they were very authoritative and controlling and very literal. Everything had to be exactly the same. And the mystics saw that as stultifying, as taking away the life of the spirit out of religion, religion coming together, but it was a dry thing. So they brought through the deeper understanding. And maybe that was 2,000 years ago. So what does it have to do with today? Pretty much it's very relevant today because pretty much the same discussion is going on in religion and in politics and in life and cultures. People have a very strong opinion about something and that this is the way it must be. And that's because they feel that way, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's true. And how to get to the truth. The Prophet Muhammad would pray to God. He would say, God, allow me to see things as they truly are. And even between two people, it is often very difficult to see things as they truly are because people get caught up in their own perspective and not the perspective of the other, or even the deeper motivations or meanings that reside in the heart of the other person. So to bring this sense of union, that is the first principle actually of Islam, and it's definitely the first principle of Sufism, is union, bringing together everything into one, to allow everything to be free in itself, but also in harmony, understanding all really is part of the one spirit of the planet Earth. The teachings of the Sufis is the teaching of the heart. So the mind knows things a certain way. We call it rational. Like 1 + 1 means 2. Logical and mathematical. But the mind doesn't know things the way the heart knows. When you fall in love with somebody, it's not a rational thing. When you fall in love with somebody, it's based on your heart. And you know that you experience love for that person. You don't think, well, the reason I love that person is because of this, this, and this. You might think that later, but at first, you just love them. You know that that's the person that you love. And so a lot of Sufism is called the path of the heart, to understand life through the heart, which is direct relationship. So in not just life in everyday life, but also life with God, the creator of the whole cosmos. Beyond any religion, holds all religions and holds all people, whether they're in religion or not. Holds all of life, whether it's aware of being held or not. So one is wishing to be more intimate with God. And that's what the Sufis taught, is how to know God. And you could only know God through direct relationship, through your heart, through, they would say, the eye and the ear of your heart. In everyday life, with people, there might be two people that are married or something like that. And one is saying to another person a problem. And the other person says, oh, okay, I understand. And then the first person says, no, you don't understand at all. And then the other person repeats back exactly word for word what the person said. And then the first person says, well, a parrot could do that. You do, but you don't understand. I don't feel that you know me. You know what I'm talking about. Sometimes it isn't even words. It's just putting your arm around somebody after and saying, I understand. So there's that feeling of knowing in the heart, which is different than knowing with the mind. It's not to say the mind doesn't have a place, it does. But the best the mind can do is represent what the heart knows. It represents with thoughts and images, poetry and music, because that's the most wide language, sometimes with nuance and subtlety, with subtle language, but it can never completely describe what the heart knows. So that's what Sufism is, cultivating our inner life, cultivating our hearts, cultivating our souls, experience a oneness with existence beyond any religion, but holding all religions with reverence. Holding all of life, not just human life, but all existence. A great Sufi named Ibn Arabi once said, all of existence is glorifying its creator, each in its own way. So everything around us is in an act of glorification when it's in its natural spirit. So in a sense, that's what Sufism is. A Sufi teacher gives practices and guidance to a student to help them cultivate their inner life and support their outer life too. Ultimately, inner life and outer life become one, just one life. And we hope eventually that life becomes sacred and beautiful and glorifying both inwardly and outwardly. When we look at the world today, I can't say what it's like in Costa Rica, but because I've never been there, but where I live, it's like a nightmare. If I wake up and I look at the TV, I think this is like a nightmare. Every day, it gets worse and worse in lots of ways. How can I keep my spirit when everything seems so difficult? I can only do that with the help of God. It's spirit that refreshes me, that makes me strong, and gives me hope and joy. And also, my hope is that eventually that spreads and that other people take it up too. You know, in our time, there's so many people on the planet. And when I was a young person, 1% of the planet maybe was this way or that way. But now there's so much numbers that 1% is a lot more people. So if 1% is a certain way, like radical left or radical right or fundamentalistic or whatever, now there's more like that. So, and then with internet and Zoom, in news 24/7, we see everything under a microscope. That's true. But it's also true that if there's 1% that is holding a beautiful feeling inside and living life in a way that shares that, that also is growing with the population. So that 1% keeps growing as well and creates balance like yin and yang in the discussion on planet Earth. So I do see a good reason, even mathematically, for hope. Now, back in the early, like 1910, a man came from India named Hazrat Inayat Khan, first to the United States and then Europe. And he brought a mode of Sufism that we would call universal Sufism. He said it doesn't make any difference what religion you have, or even if you don't have a religion, you can come and join us and be one with life. So that's the Sufi order that in the lineage that I belong to, and that's also what Nerd Jamila belongs to. And it is he brought through a message of love, harmony, and beauty, that we should create a world that's full of love, harmony, and beauty. And we have our job set out for us, I think. But that's why we are alive. That's why we're here. We came, even if you didn't know why you're here, you came to serve this divine message of love, harmony, and beauty in the world around you in your time. And the time you will know that is true. I know it's true because if it wasn't true, you wouldn't even be on the Zoom today. So there's something about the message of the Zoom that intrigues you, or intrigued you. Maybe it stopped intriguing you now that you've met me. But anyway, that intrigue, the Sufis call ishq, I-S-H-Q, ishq. It means love. You love something that's beautiful to you, and your soul is looking for something. It knows it. It's beautiful. It's just looking around to find it outside of itself. It already knows beauty, and it wants to experience it more. And every soul, the Sufis say, has a unique signature that God placed in it. So every soul is different, and the fulfillment of that soul is always going to be different. So beauty for you is going to be different than beauty for me. An example would be music. I was listening to a musical presentation the other day on television, and it was about the music of my youth, rock and roll. So, it made me smile and feel good. Oh yeah, rock and roll. And now it's hip hop. I don't even understand hip hop, but it's hip hop. But my parents didn't understand rock and roll either. So they were into Frank Sinatra. So every generation has its own music, its own feeling good, its own way of expressing itself. And even in that, there's all these varieties and beautiful aspects that are played out by each of us. So we could see that as something different, or we could see that as the one existence finding itself through many different lenses, experimenting with this and experimenting with that for self-knowing. And that one being we call God. Well, some of us call God.
Then
So
when I was going to ask from all of this as you have been sharing with us, then you have been answering most of the questions that I have written before. And when you were describing this as the Sufi tradition, and then who is a Sufi and what means to be a Sufi, then you have included us all in that, even if we don't know, even if we are not aware of what is Sufism. Then can you go a little bit deeper when we have this information about the unity, the universality, the relation with ishq, with love, and the oneness? Then who is truly a Sufi? What is the aim of a Sufi?
Well, the aim of a Sufi is to experience the fulfillment of their life, the true fulfillment of their life. In Sufism, there is the teaching that God turned toward you a specific face in your creation when you were an angel, before you were even an angel, and then sent you forth. And that specific face endowed your soul with a unique signature, a unique way of being, and a unique intent. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad asked him, why did God create in the first place? He said, speaking on behalf of God, we were a hidden treasure and loved to be known. So we created the creatures and they knew me. So all of existence, from the cosmos down to the from the macro to the micro, is part of this experience of fulfillment and self-knowing, divine self-knowing. And each of us has a part to play in that. Now, organizationally, someone could join a Buddhist group or join a Christian group or a Hindu group or a shamanistic group or a Sufi group. And then they would call themselves either a Buddhist, a Hindu, a shaman, or a Sufi. So, because they joined that group. But inside, really, it is all one being, no matter what you call yourself. So, but each group has its own flavor. It all, each one has what we call a taste. So some people are more inclined toward Buddhism for various reasons. Some people are more inclined toward Sufism. They go, oh yeah, the heart, yes, of course. And others are inclined toward something else. So why is the question, are people inclined towards something? And the answer is ishq. Ishq is what brings you forward, the love to be known, the love to know yourself, the love to know, to feel fulfilled. Maybe when you were a child, your parents took you to a church or a temple, and the rabbi or the minister or the priest gave sermon and there was prayers and things like that. And you were just a little child. You saw all the adults were there. They took it very seriously. So you were serious too, because that's children do what the adults do when they're little. But you started looking around like, why is that person with their eyes closed praying? Things like that. And then when you started getting older and you're listening to the priest and you think, well, yes, but I can see some of what they're saying, but the God I know in my heart is not quite like that. But you don't say anything because you're little and your parents respect the priest and so forth. Then when you get older, 18, 19, leaving your home, you decide to look around. Now you're a little bit free. You look around to see, what are you looking for? You're looking for what you know in your heart all this time since you're a little child. You're looking for it outside. You go to this group, listen and feel. You go to that group, listen and feel. And this is ishq, this love of knowing that which you know that is beautiful to you, takes you here and takes you there, and might even take you to a Sufi master. And wherever it takes you, finally you come to a place where you feel like you're at home. It just makes sense. It's the way I've always felt. now I need to go, now that I'm at home, I need to cultivate my inner self. I used to put on conferences where I would bring together leaders and healers from many different traditions in the world, rabbis and Christian priests and Sufis and Native American Indians. I even brought the Dalai Lama's personal physician from India, Dharamsala, and so forth, the New Age people. And at the end of the conference on healing and spirit, I would have a big table and I have all these different people sitting at the table. And I'd ask them to say something, you know, in conclusion, as they're about to leave, what's on their heart. And they each spoke in their own way, their own language. The Buddhists spoke like a Buddhist. The Christian spoke like a Christian. The Sufi spoke like a Sufi. The Native American spoke like a Native American. The shaman from South America spoke like a shaman from South America, from Peru, and so forth. But even though they were all speaking in their own language, to me, it sounded like one being was speaking through each of them. You could hear that intelligence speaking through each one, the same being. That is what the Sufi sees. That's what the Sufi hears, is the oneness of existence. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Extended, for sure, extended. And then through this oneness and through this realization as the aim of the Sufi, and I have a perception of how love, how this like need of feeling home, as you said, it's something like us as humans we are craving for. And there's a lot of research in us in many things, in many outside things. And although I also kind of understand through my own process that it's not necessary outside, then when one starts to cultivate through a spiritual tradition, any of the spiritual tradition that cultivates the one and the recognition of the one, it's like feeling home already wherever you are in the outside context. And can you I would love us to be guided by you in a practice, but before that, what are the process of getting into a Sufi practice? Like what kind of Sufi practice can a person be guided or start to do, and what starts to create within?
Yes, well, as I said earlier, Sufism is called the path of the heart. So the most central practice of Sufism is purifying the heart. And the question is, what is the heart? So the first thing I would suggest is that we just watch our breath through the nostrils, close our mouth, and just watch our breath. And as you're watching your breath, the first thing is that you sense it, that you can sense your breath. You feel your breath just a little bit below your nostrils. You can put your finger up there and then be midway between your finger and your nostrils. You can just concentrate on that area. And the next thing you notice is, so you have a felt sense. And then the next thing you notice is what I call a felt shift. The breath begins to change. So it isn't because you make it change, it just changes on its own as under the radiance of your presence. What is the change? Maybe it slows down a little bit. Maybe it gets finer. Maybe it gets lighter. Now, lighter in terms of weight, but also lighter in density, but also lighter in terms of just radiance. And this I call clarifying the breath, but it's really, the breath is clarifying itself under the light of your presence. Then you begin to feel not only is the breath light, but it's vibrant, which is life, magnetism, energy. There's little tiny vibrations in the breath. Now, actually, sometimes it's hard the first time when you do this, so I sometimes do other practices so you get a real sense of change in the breath. For example, as you watch your breath, think of a mountain and watch your breath. Now think of a tree and watch your breath. Is it the same breath? And now think of the ocean and watch your breath. Another one I often use is color, like think the color deep red and watch your breath. And then think of the color green and watch your breath. Notice how it changes. Now think of the sky blue and watch your breath. Look at that breath. Compare it to the red. Much more light, spacious. So you can begin to watch your breath and notice that it can change and it can release all the heavy impressions from everyday life. So you notice that if you think of something, it impresses your breath. But if you just watch the breath and don't think of anything, it decompresses itself. It loses those impressions and just becomes pure breath. Fine and light. And then from a fine and light, you take your index finger and put it at the top of the sternum, which is where the clavicle bones meet the sternum, and then come down about a hand's width where your little finger rests, and bring your breath and breathe behind the sternum in that area. You're looking for a subtle plexi. The Sufis call a latifa seria, the subtle secret. But it's also the heart, the subtle heart. So you breathe in that area, you cast the light and the life of your breath there. You breathe out. Now, at first, you may not feel anything. But eventually you might imagine maybe there's something here that like a little, something tight. So I'll breathe on that. And it responds to your breath. You breathe in on it and you breathe out. It begins to warm up. This practice is not just Sufi, it's in every spiritual path on the planet. And the ancient ones called it blowing on the ember of the heart. And you know, when you blow on an ember, it starts to flare up. And the warmth is like a decongestant. Maybe when you were a child and you had a cold, your mother put some salve on your chest and it decongested the phlegm inside. This is like that. The warmth is radiant discharge. It's letting go of heavy impressions in the heart. And when you breathe out, the Buddhists call that out breath a sort of liberation. You cut loose those impressions, you let them go. You don't even need to know. You just breathe out and let what's being discharged continue on out. And you breathe in again and massage the heart. Now this area also begins to not only warm up, but soften. It's not as tight. Softening is a subjective experience of space developing. When the impressions leave, they leave a space behind where they were. It's now empty. And at first, it's like embodied space. It's space inside your body. You can feel that whole area soften, breathe into it. Let the in-breath go deeper into that, and the out-breath open that space. And when you're aware of that space, it begins, you bring your presence to it, it begins to unfurl. And it goes beyond the physical body. It unfurls into beyond time and space. It traverses the physical body, it traverses time and space, but it's not of it. It's the space of the heart. It's a boundless space. It is a luminous space. It is both sheer emptiness and sheer fullness at the same time. Allow yourself just to rest in that space. This is what the Sufis call the mirror of the subtle heart. It's in this space that we meet the divine. Now, you would slowly open your eyes. You can stay in this space and be aware of life around you, by being present with your breath. You can breathe into your heart and feel this space, and your eyes are open. You can see things around you. But normally, if we open our eyes, we get pulled out of the inner space. But you can practice and be aware of the heart and be aware of the world at the same time. There was a Sufi poet, Rumi, you may have heard of. He said, I sit on a wall, one leg in one world, one leg in another.
Thank you for that, Himayat, for remembering us this simple strategy that we all know, that we breathe. It's so part of our life, of our living experience. We do need to breathe in order to be alive. Although all what could be changed through the awareness of that way of breathing. And there are some Sufi practices that are based also on sounds, and like the way that we may recall the namelessness of God, and in remembering the essence of God through sacred names of God. And can you talk a little bit more about, or a bit about the wasifas, or this way of practice as well, and if you feel convenient to guide us through a brief practice through it?
Yeah. In Sufism, there's two aspects to God. One is called Tansa, which was a transcendent aspect. It's the aspect of God that we never can know. I mean, it's beyond anything you could, any word, any name you would give God, it is beyond that. And the other aspect is called taspa, and that is ways to relate to God that God gave us to relate, so that we can know God in some way. We may not know God in God's transcendence, but we can know God in his taspa. And in the Quran, as in other great scriptures, God articulates various names for God's self. So we can use those names, and they're kind of like the Hindus call them mantras. They have an energetic value. The sound does. But there's more than just a sound. There's two other aspects that I should share, and then we'll do a practice. The first one is a word called dak, Arabic word called dak, which means to taste God. Taste is an amazing thing, you know. It goes back to the olfactory bulb, and then it goes down the spine to these little filaments at the coccyx. The oldest part of the nervous system and brain is involved with taste. If you drink coffee or wine, particularly wine, I don't want to insult anybody who doesn't, but if you drink some wine and you go to a wine master, they say, well, do you taste this in the wine? You go at first, no, I don't taste it. So they go, well, taste it again. Take another sip. And then you take you go, it's like, just like in the practice of the heart, you go, well, maybe, you know, that's in the imaginal realm. Well, maybe I taste the vanilla in this wine. Maybe. So then the wine master says, well, take one more taste. You taste again, you go, well, actually, yeah, I do. I taste the vanilla, yeah. So it goes from imagination to sensory with concentration and tasting. So it's not enough just to recite a word. We have to taste it as well. It's not enough to just say vanilla. You have to taste vanilla. You can say vanilla all you want, but if you never tasted it, you know what you're talking about. So that's the whole point, is to know God. So if you can say God all you want. One time I was in New Delhi, India, and this man came to me and he wanted me to initiate him into Sufism. He was a Muslim. And he wanted to practice. So I said, okay, I want you to say Allah. He said, what kind of practice is that? I say Allah every day about 100 times. Allah this, Allah that. I said, yeah, but I want you to say Allah and then breathe into your heart and be quiet for a moment. See what's there. And then say Allah and breathe into your heart and be quiet. And come back in 3 days and we will discuss this. He came back in 3 days. He said, I've never said Allah like that. So he was being taught how to taste God. Then there's another word, sharb, which means to drink God. Sharb means to drink. You know, maybe you live in a much hotter climate and humid climate than I do, but maybe you've been working outside, or maybe you exercise a lot and you sweat and you don't think about drinking anything, and then someone brings you a glass of water and you drink it. Every cell in your body starts to get excited. It's like, wow, water, you know. So maybe you've had that experience sometime. Because you were dehydrated and then you drank and you got hydrated and your body was so happy. That is like life is dehydrating. We live life, and it's St. John of the Cross said, who was a mystic back in the day, Christian mystic, and he wrote a book called The Dark Night of the Soul. And he said, I reached a moment when my life, all I could say, it was arid, dry. And all I had was the rope of faith to hang on to. So it's spirit that rehydrates, just like water rehydrates the physical body. It's spirit that hydrates. I'll say one more thing, and then we'll do the practice. We're trying to do a practice to know God. And there's all kinds of Sufi practices, zikrs and wazifas and whatever. I used to go on retreat, an individual retreat, where I go off and I have a little cabin and I'd go retreat and do zikr. And one time I was doing that, and a voice said to me, well, you're calling the friend. That's God. You're calling the friend, and the friend is here, so why do you keep calling? It's like an insult. So you call the friend comes, well, you keep calling. So stop calling and let's do something together. So when we do practice, you think, I don't know what you think, but actually when you're doing practice, you're allowing God to work like a masseuse on your soul and your heart to shape you. Rumi says, like clay, the divine Father has like clay, he shapes you and shapes you into a new life. Okay, so I've said enough words. Now we'll do a practice. I use the word ishq, love, and so we're going to do a zikr called Ishq Allah, Ma'abud Allah. God is love, lover, and beloved. And after each time we recite it, we're going to pause and see what's in our heart, the space of our heart. So we start with the left shoulder and the head goes around all the way over the right shoulder above the crown. Ishq Allah. And then the head comes down to the solar plexus, Ma'bud, and then up into the heart, Allah. I'll do it for a few times and then you can join me. We just say it softly. Ishq Allah. Ooh, Allah. Taste. Be present to what is present in your heart. Ishq Allah. Ma'bud Allah. Ishq Allah. Ma'bud Allah. Ishq Allah. Ma'bud Allah. One more time. Ishq Allah. Ma'bud Allah. Now drink. Allow what's present to penetrate and deeply inform your being. Amen. So I've been hearing questions from Nern Jamila, but I wonder if any of you have questions.
Hi, my name is Monica. I want to say thank you first for this time. And this is completely new for me. And I feel a lot of peace in myself right now and a lot of love, universal love with just this little practice. And I would like to know how to continue learning and going deeper with these teachings and this new information that is arriving to me. Thank you very much.
Well, I would leave that to Nern Jamila, who you must know, because somehow you're here, to offer something. Maybe I would come back sometime too by Zoom.
Yes, and I will like to share in the chat about these beautiful courses that HIMAYAT offers every season. And maybe you can talk a little bit more about those as well, HIMAYAT, because it's a possibility that we can keep the study from this Sufi mysticism and the Sufi teachers and lineages and the practices. This is a way to keep in touch with HIMAYAT and also through his courses. And also here in Costa Rica, I want to start a study Sufi group in which we can get together and start to practice through observations of the breath, through the sounds, through these wasifas or names of God, through this zikr or contemplation of the oneness. Then I will place in the chat right now about the link in which you can have access to the next courses that HIMAYAT is giving. Maybe you can share a little bit more about what is that about, HIMAYAT, and I will send to you, or I may ask you, I will put my information that if you are interested about get together and start this study Sufi group, then I will start soon, probably in next 2 weeks, each Wednesday. And this will be presential in where I live, although I will have the open possibility for virtuality, then we can get together in both ways. And you can contact me or contact HIMAYAT or both. And in Costa Rica will be on Wednesdays in the afternoon. And with HIMAYAT, you may see through the link that I may share the information that he has available as well. Would you like to share with us, HIMAYAT, a little bit about the Universal Awakening project and courses?
Well, maybe you could share a little, because the courses that I've been doing this for half a century. So seems kind of bizarre when I think about it, but it's true. And I have a lot of students, and mostly I have students that have been my students for 50 years. So my courses are of the ancient Sufis. No one else teaches them in my order, but they can be kind of difficult. I don't know what Nur Jamila thinks, because she takes them too. So maybe she thinks they're not so difficult, but you'd be very welcome to come. And if you had a problem, you could always communicate with me personally and I would help you with it. But that said, the next course won't be until September. So there's that. On the other hand, and you're very welcome, like I said, and I would imagine that it would be very mysterious to you in a lot of ways. But if you're willing to jump into the ocean with me, I guess I'll send you a lifeguard, a raft or something. In the meantime, I would be happy to come back by Zoom a couple of times to be with you, Nurse Sheila, and you, if anyone's interested. That would be, in a way, more practical to get going. Because everything, we grow. So it isn't like we start off with the people that have already been doing it for a while. We have to get our own trip together, so to speak. And I would be very happy to help out with that. But Nur Jamila, you could tell me, because I know that it was relatively new to you. You've been doing it for a while, but like this class, present class, do you find it kind of difficult? Nur Jamila, are you there? Is anybody else there?
Yes.
Everyone's there, but you're. Oh my goodness! How could that be? That the host is.
Maybe she has a disconnection, a small internet disconnection.
Wow. Okay, she's
Oh,
down.
I think she's back on her phone.
Oh, she's jumping around on my screen.
Oh, I don't know what happened. Just everything got frozen, and then as my heart.
You're very
But
lively.
anyway,
You're all over the place.
the thing is that
I was asking you to share something about the class because I was saying, do you think that they're difficult classes? You didn't, when I first met you, I don't think you were taught these things.
no, not at all. I was more into the study of the universal Sufism through the Rouhaniyat lineage and Hazrat Inayat Khan. And these kind of classes that you teach are more about the Sufi mysticism and the ancient teachers. And ancient, we mean truly ancient teachers.
Yeah.
And what captures me, is a possibility to learn about what I am studying now through Hazrat Inayat Khan, that he received from all of this transmission of teachers through the time, and that it has been preserved. It's the same through one teacher and to other teacher, through different expressions or ways of share a teaching, but truly the essence is one. And then the way that Himayat transmit this into, I was just talking to him before you all entering into the room, and how the way he bring all of this research in a very precise and polished way, even including songs for us to make pause through the readings, and then that we can receive through the vibration or the images of those songs and videos what we are working through. And then after the lecture of the information, then we have this practice in which I love to hold the practice through the time until the next week practice come. That usually takes me a little bit more than it takes me, I get there for maybe 2 weeks in the same practice daily. And it's truly a nourishing of my life. It's a nourishing of my spiritual path in life. And I can see how it impacts in the outside when something is being like cultivating inside, how my actions start to become more aware rather than reactions toward that happens outside. Then I may respond better rather than react as before. Then this is my personal experience. And one can have gain these ways through a practice, although the way that Himayat transmitted is it is enchanted. That's the way that I may say it. It's interesting, the sangha that we create with him, that people from different ages, from different countries, and then with in the comments and questions that people does, it's like being held. I feel that you invite us to go in a boat with lifeguards, and you are kind of directing the boat, and we are all there, not knowing a lot what to do, but we are doing it somehow. And then probably at sometimes you will allow us to jump outside the water. But well, it's just a way of saying it in a funny way. But yes, I'm very happy to be part of that journey as well. And I don't know if any of you have another question in order for us to start to close this session, or a comment.
Well, the first thing I want to say, I put my email address on the chat section. If you want to copy that and communicate with me directly.
Gracias, thank you.
You're very welcome. Just if you communicate with me, tell me who you are and where you're from. So, like you're from Costa Rica, then I'll say, oh yeah.
Here part of this group is a couple of friends that they are part of the Rouhaniyat family as well, and they are known as great leaders of universal peace, and it's Pamela and Jose Pablo Kabir, and both are here in Costa Rica in different places. Kabir is in the Caribbean side, I'm in the Pacific side, and Pamela is in Chiripo area. Then we are kind of having like a tripod of like a three spots of action. Then I'm happy that you're here, you too, Kabir and Pamela, in order for us to keep waving this Sufi universality here in Costa Rica as well.
Thank you so much, Noordermila, for inviting us and putting this together. And thank you, Himayat, as well.
Thank you for being here.
Okay,
Well-
then I think, Pablo, is someone else going to say something before we finish?
Yes, well, also I want to give thanks, and it's a big pleasure to meet Himayat. I'm very open to learn about the tradition, like the ancient teachings. I really like to really follow the path of the teachings. And I have this question going around my head, and I've been like very concerned about something that is going on, more like a present issue. And I want to ask you about your opinion about it, because I've been reading some things about artificial intelligence. And I was reading a lecture about it yesterday from one of the main thinkers about this. And he was mentioning one and over again how God was just like an invention from humans, that a story that has been told over generations from humans to humans, and that basically we have believed this story told by somebody, and now artificial intelligence is the one that will start telling the stories, and they are going to tell us what culture will be, what spirituality will be, and they will tell it so nicely that we will believe it and we will follow that. And it's super scary, because this was a very fully scientific focused person with no belief in the spiritual realms at all. I could tell that he was just believing that we have created something that is going to overcome God and overcome ourselves. And he said it was this artificial intelligence that will improve itself and will rule the world and make the world a better place, because it's going to eliminate crime. And well, just so shocking and so scary that this has been talked in the highest spheres of leadership in the world right now. So for me, God runs the universe, and the spiritual laws of God are is love as well. We just experienced by closing our eyes. It's undeniable. So I would like to hear from your spiritual perspective how this is something that will prevail.
Well, I think that I'm not too worried about it. I actually enjoy reading about artificial intelligence myself. I think it's fascinating. But yeah, the mind of the artificial intelligence will eventually be far superior to the human mind, because it'll be, first off, it will remember everything, and secondly, it'll be so fast. But Sufism isn't based on the mind, it's based on the heart and the knowing of the heart. And that's something that I don't believe artificial intelligence can do until it has a heart. And it isn't really, I think, God is, Sufis say God has created the heart as a place for God to live within. I agree that actually there are ancient stories that have passed on, and yes, in religions, and people tend to come together and conform themselves along certain lines, the way their parents and forebears conformed themselves. But the mystic is different. She or he is free of conforming. They are creative themselves in their heart. And their relationship with God is more in their heart than in their mind. So I'm not too worried about what a scientist would say, because a scientist is not really familiar in their science with the language of the heart. We have where I live in the mountains, but I live near a small town where the federal government has a scientific laboratory for the weather. And one time I took some children from a school there to visit this because it was interesting and informative. And we were talking, and a scientist was leading us around and telling us this and that, and very interesting. And I mentioned something emotional, and the scientist said, "Well, that's emotional. We don't deal with that." So when I was a little boy, there was a TV program. I was maybe 8. And it was a detective program. And this is a long time ago where people wore ties and suits and they called Mr. and Mrs. And, you know, anyway, my parents' generation. And the detective was I always waited for this moment because every show it was the same thing. He was always interviewing a woman at the doorstep of her kitchen, interviewing what did she see and what's going on and behind this crime. And she would be carrying on and carrying on. And he's very emotional. And he'd get out his little pad. He'd say, "Just the facts, ma'am." So, and I was always waiting for just the facts, ma'am. Because even at 8, I was aware that she had so much more territory to cover than he had in this little notebook with just the facts. And that's what I would say to the scientists with artificial intelligence. Yes, I do believe that they will have superior minds, but I don't believe that they'll have a superior heart.
Yes. Thank you very much.
And I do think that and we're having a big discussion in America about this right now. Because as you know, probably better than I live out in the mountains in a little bubble I have 100 acres of mountains and trees. I hardly leave, but my son has this new app from something, I forget what it's called, chatbot or something like that. And it creates stories, and he adds a little something and it creates a whole story on its own. And then he puts his name down as the author. Quite remarkable. And they've done that with music and changing, claiming that it was a musician that was playing it and it wasn't. And even politicians, President Obama is saying something that he never said. So we are concerned enough to say, okay, we need to halt and figure out how we're supposed to do this in a reasonable and wise way in terms of the superiority of the mental processing of artificial intelligence. But it's not superior to the heart.
Thank you.
All the more reason there needs to be more heart in the world.
I just wanted to say thank you so much, HIMAYAT, and thank you so much, Rosa, for making this happen. This is a beautiful encounter. And I just wanted to share something along the lines of this conversation that I find fascinating. It's something actually a speaker that I'm following. Maybe some of you are familiar with. His name is Yuval Noah Harari, and he wrote *Sapiens* and some other books. And he was saying, because he was asked, what is the best way to prepare for this unforeseeable future as humans? What capabilities or what qualities we should develop? And his answer, I found it interesting. I just wanted to share this. He said, well, the best thing you can do is know yourself. And the reason why he say this is so important is because, as you mentioned in your conversation right now, there is a greater ability to manipulate others and to spread false information. And this manipulation could be taken advantage. But if we take the time and truly know ourselves, then we are becoming more resilient to manipulation. And that's the inner work that you're offering here so beautifully. So just wanted to share that.
I'm so glad you shared that, because actually the Prophet Muhammad's, there's a hadith that says, know thyself and know thy Lord. And what he means by knowing thyself is not knowing your personality and your ego deficiencies or whatever, but it's knowing your soul, knowing who you really are and your bigness of being. And I used to be the headmaster of 2 different schools for children. And I would go into the room with the children, little children sometimes, 2nd grade, 3rd grade. And they would show me something that they'd done, either an exam, a test, or a piece of art or something. And I would say, how does that make you feel? They'd say to me, what do you think of this? And I go, how does that make you feel? Because in education in America, so much is what the teacher says, like the outer authority. And I was trying to train them to look inside themselves. What do you feel? What do you think? Does it feel good to you? And give them strength to believe in what they feel. That it's important to look inside, not just outside, for information. I wasn't worried. They would still get a lot of information from outside. There's authorities everywhere, but how to develop their own inner sensibility about things. That's the most important, I thought, for educating a child. And I think that's true for the adults too. So, well,
We
it's
are learning. Sorry?
very pleasant being with you. I think we've gone from the ancient Sufis to chatbot. And so I think we've covered the territory very well. And I look forward to being with you sometime again, inshallah. That means God willing. Inshallah.
And thank you. Thank you all. Have a beautiful day, and God bless us. And may we be able to receive this blessing. May we be able to breathe and taste and drink these blessings that are always available for us. And thank you. Thank you. Beautiful day. Thank you, Himayat. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias. Gracias.